We have economist Dr. Surjit Bhalla with us. He's been the former executive director at IMF. He joins us now for a chat. Thank you, Dr. Bhalla, for your time. My first question to you, sir. Dr. Manmohan Singh held several positions throughout his career in the RBI, Planning Commission. He was also the finance minister, prime minister. If I were to ask you who had a more decisive influence on India's economic policies and economic history, was it Manmohan Singh, the prime minister, or Manmohan Singh, the finance minister? What would your answer be?
It's very, very clear that Manmohan Singh, the finance minister, was not only the most decisive, more decisive economist and finance minister, but he laid the 1991 reforms are in many ways not comparable to anything. Because that was an idea whose time had come. There was a mega structural change. What all the youngsters, etc., who were not there in 1991, this was a mega break. So the 2004 to 2013 experience was a substantially different experience as far as the economy was concerned, because the foundation had been laid by the 1991 reforms. You have to recall what a break that was from what had happened in India in the previous 40 years of independence. I mean, it was chalk and cheese. You can't even think of comparing anything that happened subsequent to 1991 in terms of its impact and in terms of its contribution to Indian thinking and reforms.
Well, Dr. Bhalla, if you look a little back, during the first term of Manmohan Singh and at least half of his second term, the economic indicators seemed to paint a good picture, a rosy picture. The growth was on track. But where did the script exactly go wrong, as it did, leading to this chorus of policy paralysis, something that we kept hearing throughout that time?
Look, history will be the answer to that. To my knowledge, what history suggests, economic history suggests, that basically, let me add a little bit here on the election of 2009. This was there were more seats gained in this election for Congress than in any election since 1991. And, I think Manmohan Singh's party got 209 seats, and in 1991, they got 232 seats or thereabouts. All other coalition governments, including Congresses, including 2004-5, were nowhere close to the contribution of this election. And I have written on this before, others have. This was a Manmohan Singh election, the 2009. What is clear, as you are suggesting, and it is true, that after the 2009 election, things went awry and unraveled. Now, it's too early, perhaps, for history to assess as to who contributed to what went wrong after 2009. But if we have any assessment of the 1991 reforms and the 2004 to 2009 experience in India, then it clearly it was that Manmohan Singh wasn't allowed to be Manmohan Singh post-2009. And that's the unfortunate tragedy, that's the unfortunate reality. Now, why he was not allowed to be Manmohan Singh? The same reason why the great reformer Narasimha Rao himself was booted out practically by the Congress party So I think we need to look elsewhere to find out as to what went wrong, but things did go wrong and went wrong after 2009.
Right. Dr. Bhalla, also when it comes to the economic legacy of Dr. Manmohan Singh, what would you say was his biggest accomplishment?
No, the legacy is modern India. Remember the growth rate in India from 1947 GDP growth rate till 1991 had averaged something like 3% or thereabouts, the so-called Hindu rate of growth. Manmohan Singh comes on board and suddenly we're starting to grow at 6.5%. And mind you, the contribution can be assessed in the following. India has grown at about 6.2% per annum since 1991. There's no other country that has recorded this high a GDP growth rate other than China. So, and we maintain that. We've gone through various ups and downs, but we maintain that. The start of that, and the mindset change that happened in 1991 is, very, very significant. We all the time we need mindset changes. And I think maybe the time has come now for another mindset change. But excuse me. But I think, it's around the world, it's just not India, etc. But you look at economic performance around the world and the break points in economic history of 200 nations, that there are two events that stand out. One was obviously China starting in 1978, and the other is India starting in 1991.
Right. Also, Dr. Bhalla, as an objective analyst who has observed politics for long, what would your assessment of Dr. Singh's legacy would be as a politician, also as a policy maker, and also the fact that he was not a traditional politician in the conventional sense of things? Was that a handicap for him, or was it of advantage to him?
Well, a very good question. I think, again, as I have tried to illustrate through his tenure, both as finance minister and as prime minister, he was not look, he was political. Otherwise, he couldn't have survived in the system that we have. But ultimately, the most common description of Manmohan Singh is a very decent man. He meant well. He really didn't have any enemies, either in politics or outside. Quite a unique leader in the world. And he stayed that way. That doesn't mean that everything, as we have discussed, turned out good for him or for the country. But ultimately, a very, very fundamentally decent human being. And there are very, very few people, let alone politicians, for whom one can provide that description. And I think that stays, he meant very well. He did very well. He changed the course of India. And that is what we'll all remember him for. And that is what we'll all remember him for.
Right. Thank you, Dr. Bhalla, for your time and for those insights. Thank you so much for joining us on NDTV. That was Dr. Surjit Bhalla.